In the last video, we downloaded all the tools we needed to get started writing JavaScript. So in this video, we're actually going to start writing our very first JavaScript program. And in order to do that, I've opened up the text editor Visual Studio Code. And once you have this open, what you need to do in order to get started writing a program is to open up a folder where you want to write your code. So you can just click up here where it says File, click on Open Folder, and then you can choose any folder you want to work within. For me, I'm going to be using a folder called Current Project. You can use any folder you want. I just recommend that if you do a folder name, make sure it's all lowercase and that you don't have any spaces. So I have current-project. This is going to be important because sometimes when you want to initialize or download things, having a space in your name or capital letters could make things a little bit more difficult. So here we go. Choose any folder you want. Doesn't really matter. When you click select folder, it's going to open up Visual Studio Code inside of that folder. You're going to have on the left side here all of your different files. So we can create a file over here called like test.js. And for example, we now have a file which we can edit. Also, at the bottom, we're going to have what's called our terminal. This is going to allow us to execute some of our code. And then in the middle section is going to be where your currently open file is at. So in order to get started, let's create our very first JavaScript file. We can click that new file button here, and we can name this anything that we want. But commonly, you're going to refer to your very first main file as either index, for example, or script. In our case, we're just going to call this script. And then to denote that this is a JavaScript file, just put period and then JS at the end. So you want to have the JS extension at the end of your file. And immediately you'll notice when we do that, we get this JS symbol next to our file. And this is saying that we have a JavaScript file. Now, generally, when you're learning your first programming language, the most common program you're going to write is called a Hello World application. And all this program does is print out the text Hello World to the screen in some way. In JavaScript, this is luckily really easy to do. In order to print something out to a screen in JavaScript, we just need to type the word console. We can say console, then we put a period. I'll also refer to this as a dot very often. So console dot, and then we need to put the word log. So we have console.log. And then if we put a parenthesis here, we're going to have an opening and closing parenthesis. And inside of here, whatever we put is going to be printed out to the screen. In our case, we want to print out the text hello world. What we're going to do is put a single quote here. As you can see, we have a single quote and another single quote. And in between those single quotes, we're going to just put the text, hello world. And then we can save this file. And once we have that saved, it's going to have our code here. And now we can run this code, which is going to print out hello world. And it's important to note that you have these periods in the correct place, your parentheses in the correct place, and your single quotes in the correct place, just like I do here. Now to run this, we're going to go down to our terminal here. And if you don't have this open, you can come up here, click View, and then come down where it says Terminal and click that. That'll open it up. Or what I generally do is hit Control and then the tilde key, and that'll allow you to open or close your terminal without having to worry about clicking in the menus. Now with that open, and if you have Node.js installed, you can run the command node and then the name of your file, in our case, script.js. We hit enter, you're going to notice it prints out the text hello world for us and then exits out of our program so we can rerun it again if we want. And an easy way to rerun an application in your terminal is just to click the up arrow. That'll go up to whatever your previous command is. We can click enter again, and you can see it again printed out hello world. If we change this to hello world with a few exclamation points, resave our file, and run it, you'll see it now prints out that new exclamation point version of our text. So this is how we run our JavaScript inside of the Node.js environment. For example, if you wanted to run this on a server, Node.js is perfect for that. But generally, when you're writing JavaScript, you want to run it inside of the browser. So next, I'm going to show you how to do that. First, we need to have an HTML file to render this in our browser. So let's create a new file called index.html. This index naming is very common for your main index HTML file here. And all we need to do is if you're using VS Code, it's going to have a tool called Emmet already installed. And if you just click exclamation point and tab, this is all of the generic HTML code you need in order to get your very basic web page up and running with nothing inside of it. And now all we need to do is actually render out our JavaScript inside of here. So in order to include JavaScript inside of your HTML, you can put this anywhere you want. It can be in the head, it can be in the body. We'll just do it inside the head here. We just want to type out a script tag. So it's going to be called script like this. You need to make sure you have an opening and closing script tag just like that. And then we can just put in here a source. That source is going to point to our file, in our case, script.js. We can leave everything inside of here completely blank because this is going to pull in the file for us. Now, if we save this, we have an HTML file that has our JavaScript being pulled in, but we don't actually know how to run this yet. Easiest way, in my opinion, to run this is to use an extension called Live Server. If you click over here on this Extensions tab on the left-hand side of your sidebar, and you just type in Live Server, you should see the very first option here is this Live Server extension. It's got 10 million downloads. It's incredibly useful. All you need to do is install this, and it will allow you to live reload your site. So whenever you make a change in your file and save it, it'll automatically refresh your site for you. So once you have this installed, we can go back into our index.html. We can just right click it on the sidebar here, and you have this new option called Open with Live Server. When we click that, it's going to open up your application inside of your server. So you can pull up over here. We have Google Chrome pulled up on the side here. Let me just get this off to the side too. So now here's our application pulled up on the side, but it's not printing anything yet because right now we're just seeing our HTML. For example, if we type in the body, you'll see that that gets printed over here, but we're not actually printing that hello world from our JavaScript file. And the reason we're not seeing that right away, because when we log something in JavaScript, it actually gets printed inside of the browser developer tools, not onto the actual web page itself. What we need to do is right click, come down here where it says inspect. Another thing you can do is click Control-Shift-I, and that's going to open up this right here for you, which is the developer tools for the browser that you're inside of. I'll just make this full screen so we can see exactly what's going on. The biggest, most important tab for this is going to be this console tab right here. If we click on this, you can see that text that we logged out inside of our console is showing up right here, hello world, with the 4 exclamation points. If we just move that off to the side, and I change this to be no exclamation points and save, you'll see it automatically refreshes our page, re-renders everything, and runs this code again. And that's because of that Live Server extension I had you install. It just makes it so easy for us to, come along here, change something, click save, and immediately see those changes take effect without having to manually refresh our browser every single time. That's an absolute pain to do. Now, so far, I've thrown a lot at you in this video, and I don't expect you to perfectly understand exactly everything that's going on right away, right now, because as we go through the rest of this course, we're going to be practicing and practicing all of these different techniques, and everything that I'm talking about in this video is going to make so much more sense as we practice it and iterate over it on our own. But I notice a lot of times students, the biggest problem they have is just very basic things, such as maybe forgetting that closing quote here, so they only have one quote, or they forget a parenthesis somewhere, and then when you save and you inspect and try to run your page, you notice you start getting errors instead of actually having hello world being printed out. So in the next video, I'm going to show you some tools that you can download that are going to help you find these problems and fix them so that you can run into less of these errors and write out more code that's actually working.